For those who are here, you can start reading this question. Remember, this question is found at the end of the slide, right? If you want to practice.
Stop already.
Yeah, just
Imagine
continue.
one day you get like 5K viewers.
I wish.
Then you become like fucking rich from just doing it.
No, I can't.
You wake up overnight like millions.
From the perspective
No, that's over that way.
why
That's over that way.
important for a country to
You won't be that way, man.
maintain stable currency?
I wish. I will quit my job.
Sure what a relatively
There is a
stable
live stream
currency
next
means. The rough
Yeah,
meaning
just
is
go to
that
random
here it is trying
lectures,
to
right?
say that the currency value should not fluctuate too excessively over
Excited,
a prolonged period of time.
It's funny. It's like something that will happen in
This is a
movie.
reminder for assessments. Suddenly very quiet. Sometimes the question would highlight you whether you should answer it from a certain perspective. So if the question highlights that it should be answered from the perspective of the government, then you should use the perspective of the government to give reasons rather than the individual one person or the individual one company. Because when you have different perspectives, you may come with different answers. The perspective of an employer and the perspective of an employee may be different for a matter. The perspective of a local and the perspective of a foreigner may be different for a matter. So make sure you answer based on what's asked. If there is no specification, then you can answer whatever you like. But if you are constrained by what is given by the question, then make sure you answer accordingly. So if let's say the question asks for the perspective of the government, then some of the same reasons that can cover the national level in broader sense. So please do not complain that I'm very unhappy that I have to pay a higher price over Amazon or Taobao. Okay, that will not be a valid reason. Okay, then talking about currency stability in general, it is natural, as you know, that currency value can go up and down, can rise and fall. It is natural, not big a problem in this case. It is natural that the currency value may move gradually upwards or downwards. It is also okay. The problem comes when you have fluctuations too excessively over a prolonged period of time. So it's like a roller coaster ride for months and months and months. That will be a serious problem. Because day-to-day fluctuations, small fluctuations, that will be understandable and natural for any economic situation. Then why is it important? We will revisit some of these factors again in other lessons. We will have some of these factors mentioned in a suggested reading as well. I think there's one enrichment reading that you can go through. Some points will be relevant. So you need to consolidate different ideas from different sources. So perhaps I'll give you some teaser of what you can look at. Ta-da! Okay. So here are some areas whereby you can consider or explore when you want to talk about whether it is important or not to have stable currency. So there are actually many things to look at, which also means that the stability of a currency has varied implications. You may not see this directly It may happen indirectly, but there will be a lot of implications. That is why it is important for any empire in the past and country in the present to make sure that currency exchange rates are relatively stable. So I will highlight some points here and there for you to consider. First part would be management of living costs and business costs. When you have more stable currency, you can manage living costs and business costs better and more easily. I think we have mentioned this many times just now as well. When currency exchange rates are very volatile, your import and export prices would be very volatile. I've mentioned just now, if the prices or currency exchange rate go up and down very drastically, it's very hard for individuals and businesses to do planning and to know how much they have and how much they don't have and what should they do. You don't have that certainty, you don't have that predictability. Because you do not know what is your expenditure, you do not know what is your earnings, you do not know what comes next day, the next year, the next month, etc. Then if you want to make decisions, very difficult. If you want to do accounting, also very difficult. One value stated today, then tomorrow is another value. Yeah, it will be a challenge. It can also affect the flow of investments and deposits into a country. So if imagine that I deposited $1 million in this country. Then tomorrow I wake up, this $1 million become 900K because of currency exchange rates. This would cause a lot of worry to investors and depositors. I'm very scared that my wealth would shrink or loss because of all these fluctuations in currency exchange rates. So investors and depositors may be more confident of other currencies and other countries. They may trust other currencies and other countries more. Hence, they may decide to move money out from this country and transfer it to other currencies or other countries. When you have a lot of investors and depositors moving money out from the country, you may have this scenario called capital flight. We will see this capital flight again in future. Capital means money, flight means fly away. In basic sense, it's trying to say money fly away out of the country. As you can imagine, if a lot of funds are flowing out of the country, then the country may not have enough funds for growth and development. The next point here talks about purchasing power and purchasing desire. If the currency exchange rates are very volatile, it is possible that the value of your hard-earned money or hard-saved money may evaporate and shrink. If your wealth shrinks because of this, you may not have the ability to spend or buy more things. So you have less purchasing power. Maybe you have the money to buy things, but even you have the money to buy things, you may not dare to buy things. You may be hesitant to buy things because of all the uncertainties around. You may want to hold on to the cash because cash is king. You may want to take a wait and see attitude and observe what's going on in the world. You may want to make a next move when there are more certainties. So you may have less desire to spend as well. Regardless whether you have less ability to spend or you have less desire to spend, everyone will be buying less things. So when people are buying less things, businesses will be producing less things. Then the whole economy will become less energetic, less vibrant, less activity. So you may have your whatever the GDP dropping possible link related to currency stability would be your salary. Your salary can actually be affected because of this fluctuation. If let's say you have too much fluctuations in currency exchange rates, then there is a chance that the prices of goods and services in your country may increase, especially if the prices of the goods and services are highly reliant on imports. If you produce your own things, maybe you do not care about the exchange rates. But if you are in places like Singapore, whereby most of the things you use are from overseas, then when import prices go up, then your prices of goods and services sold in Singapore will also go up. If prices go up in Singapore, it also means that your living costs will go up. You have to spend more money on the same things, then you feel very burdened, you feel very pressurized. You say, I cannot survive anymore with my little salary. Then you will start going to your bosses and bank tables. I want salary increment because I cannot survive anymore. Then everyone go and bank their tables, bank their tables. Suppose that the bosses relent and the bosses agree to give you salary increment. But actually the bosses do not have enough company profit to pay for your salary increment. Then where would your salary increment come from? The main way the bosses would use shall be to increase the prices of the goods and services offered by the company. So I try to, if I sell projectors, then I will increase the price of my projectors so that the extra money gain I can pay your salary. And it would mean that overall, the prices of goods and services in that country will go up a bit. So you have this vicious cycle, like prices go up, I back table, then my salary come up. Then your salary come up, the prices also go up, then you keep doing this again and again. This will be a lot of pressure to the bosses, a lot of pressure to the workers, and a lot of pressure to the economy in general. I think I can talk about the confidence in currency and economy and governance together because it's quite straightforward. Your currency value always goes haywire in an uncontrollable manner. People would have less trust and confidence in that currency naturally. And people will have less confidence in the economy of that place. People will have less confidence of the government because they will feel that the government is not doing a good job in managing the company. They're not doing a good job in managing economy whatsoever. So if my general sentiment is that the government is not good in managing the economy, be it in currency sense or whatever sense, I may not want to put in too much trade and investment in this country. Yeah, so it will also mean the country may have less trade and investment, the country will have less economic growth and development. Sometimes, not all the time, if currency is very unstable in value, it may increase the cost of bank loans. Yeah. So which sector handles a lot of currencies? Which sector is most implicated by currency movements? Banks will handle all types of currency. Banks survive on financial transactions. So if you have your currency value going up and down like a roller coaster, then the banks will have a lot of risk, a lot of uncertainty to handle. So one way to cushion the risk and uncertainty would be to increase the cost of bank loans. In other words, increase the interest rates for the loans. Because hopefully, if you increase the interest rates, the extra interest earned by the bank can be used to compensate or buffer any potential loss caused by the fluctuations. So if I lose $2 million due to the fluctuation in exchange rates, hopefully I can get $2 million from the interest rates to cancel off. It's like a risk management strategy. It may not happen all But whatever the case, if you increase interest rate for loans, it means that the individuals and companies borrowing money will feel more burden. The overall economy will have more debts. Yeah. Lastly, on wealth distribution, mentioned possible rise in interest rates. When the market goes up and down like crazy, right, you will always have some people gaining a lot of money out of it. You will also have some people losing a lot of money out of it, depending on where you gamble, right? You gamble the upstairs or downstairs of the crowd. Whatever the case, the distribution of wealth due to this fluctuation would be considered as unfair, because the distribution of these people getting more and those people losing more would be uncontrollable, would be unintended, would be unfair. So it would not be so fair to the population. And the tendency would be that those people who are richer, who are very rich with a lot of assets, they can use the assets to play the markets, play the currency value, play the property value, play the stock value because of this fluctuation. And when they play the value well, right, they can gain money by 20%, 50%, or 100% of their assets. As compared to common folks logging, we only get salary increment of 2%, 5%, you know. So if these people are earning a lot of wealth from all this speculation, they get richer and richer, and then the poor souls down there only get 2%, 5%, or even 0% of salary increment. They may not become poorer, they may become stagnant. So the inequality between the rich and poor will be bigger. You will have more social discontent, etc. We will talk about the social discontent again in future lessons. So this is just a teaser to keep you in mind. So we shall move back to the second part of lesson 3 process. Before we stop the first part, we were mentioning that the traders were petitioning to the government to issue a local currency. And eventually the government decided to accede to the request and really issue a local currency. This local currency will be called Straits dollar. The first line here is just to repeat that Singapore was sort of on a pseudo silver-based system. We have said just now that although Singapore did not have a local currency, but most of the currency used or preferred in Singapore were on silver standard. So we are a bit like on silver standard, even though we do not have a currency of our own. The government set up this currency board in 1899 to issue Straits dollar, and only the currency board could issue this currency. So it's not like banknotes. Banknotes, every bank can issue their own banknotes. For this currency, only one entity, one organization can do so, and that would be the currency board. It says here that the Straits settlements moved from the silver standard to sterling standard in 1906. Okay, actually between 1899 and 1906, there were many events happening, and the government made several changes to the model of currency here, and made several changes to the policies. You do not have to bother about them. Okay, if you are interested, you can read the textbook. For this course, you just need to know two things. In 1899, Straits dollars came out. In 1906, sterling standard was adopted. That's it. Anything in between, if you're interested, you can read up. I'm very generous to say, please don't need to know more beyond these two lines. Okay, we'll keep that as that. What do you mean by sterling standard? If gold standard means that the currency is benchmarked to the value of gold, then sterling standard is something like to benchmark the currency to the value of sterling. Apart from benchmarking Straits dollar to the value of sterling, Straits dollar had a fixed exchange rate with sterling, such that 1 Straits dollar will be equivalent to 2 shillings and 4 pence. It's a fixed rate, flat, day in, day out, always this rate. It is unlike now, we see every day you have fluctuation, right? Today Sing dollar, US dollar is this value, tomorrow is that value. No, this will be fixed. Always, perpetually, this will be the rate. Later on, it says here that Straits dollar no longer at gold value guarantee. Okay, what is this trying to say? When you benchmark Straits dollar to the value of sterling, indirectly it means that Straits dollar would be on gold standard, right? Because last time sterling was on gold standard. So indirectly, Singapore and Straits settlements would be like having gold standard for Straits dollar. But in the 1930s, sterling stopped being benchmarked to gold standard because the world economic recessions at that time made this arrangement more difficult and unsustainable. But people do not mind. They are okay. People trusted sterling. People trusted Britain. They did not mind that the gold standard was gone. So if you can make someone trust the currency, it does not matter why or how that person trusts the currency. It is not a must
What if they have no
to
choice?
have a standard in order for the trust to happen. So the way Straits dollar work is similar to the way how the banknotes work. It is still the case whereby you deposit money to the board, then the board gives you a piece of paper as we see. As and when you want to redeem the coins, you will take this piece of paper and you surrender it to the board, and the board will pay you the real coins. The main difference would be the issuer. So for Straits dollar, it will be issued by the currency board. It will be managed by a currency board. So it is issued and managed by the government, not the private sector. And for the Straits dollar, the so-called real coins providing backing will be specifically sterling. For other banknotes, it can be sterling pound, it can be other currency depending on the bank. But for this one, it's very specific, it is sterling. Then if you read the words shown on the Straits dollar note, it is similar to what you see on the banknotes, right? I promise to pay a certain amount of money based on the value of the note when you come to me and redeem the coins. The Straits dollar managed to work quite well. The Straits dollar managed to become quite stable and attractive because of some reasons mentioned here. It says here that currency arrangement placed trust on sterling and gain strength on the link with sterling. So basically, Straits dollar were benchmarked to sterling and had a fixed exchange rate with sterling. So Straits dollar is a bit like a representation of sterling. So holding on a Straits dollar note is something like holding on to sterling currency. So when people trust Straits dollar, it is not so much that they trusted Straits dollar per se, but because they trusted the sterling and the British Empire behind it, the sterling and the British Empire backing it. Besides, the currency board adopted prudent management and investment practices, unlike those problematic banks that indulge a lot on currency board would have better financial health, would have ample liquidity, so people feel more assured that they could get back their coins when they go for redemption. They are quite assured that the currency board will not collapse, will not go bankrupt. We mentioned about the fixed exchange rate. When you have fixed exchange rate, the currency value is very stable. There's hardly change, actually there's no change between these two currencies. So if you add even more stability to the currency value for many, many years. This exchange rate lasted until this currency was gone. So it was about 60 years. This fixed exchange rate lasted for about 60 years. 60 years is a very long time. So the period of stability is very long. And when we come to supply, just now we have said that sometimes the banks may not have enough supply of the notes. Sometimes the empires may not have enough supply of the coins or whatsoever. But for Straits dollars, you can ensure that there will be decent amount of supply for use by everyone here because it is directly controlled by the government. If you do not have enough currency, then the government can think of solution, can think of something to do, right? If you have too much flowing in the market, then the government can also do something. Because the government can intervene directly, you can ensure that you have enough of that paper or coin or whatever to work with during transactions. In relation to the last line, it's trying to imply that the Straits dollars were not only used in Straits settlements in British territories, they were also used by places around Straits settlements like the Malay states. So the Malay states were not under British rule, but they happily used the Straits dollars because they preferred to use the Straits dollars due to the convenience and confidence, etc. A bit more about how the currency board works. So as I said earlier, the concept would work a bit like how banknotes operate. Therefore, people would deposit sterling at the currency board. Then the currency board will provide the Straits dollars in return. This currency board would not just collect the sterling and let it collect dust in the drawer. The currency board would use the sterling deposited to make bond investments in the London market. And profits gained from these investments would be used to run and finance operations of the currency board. So you use this as a way to earn revenue, and this revenue will be used to support the currency board survival. I am not sure whether you know what a bond is or what a bond investment is. At this point of time, you just need to know that bond investments are less risky and more stable. We will talk more about what a bond is later on in future lessons. At this point, you just need to know that this is a less risky and more stable investment. When investment is less risky, will it give more or less profit? Less. It is natural. You take less gamble, you will have less profit, right? Yeah. But it is okay for the currency board because their main aim is to issue the currency and to have enough money to survive. Their main aim is not to earn fat profits like the banks. The banks will go for risky investments to earn big money. For them, they are not concerned about that. They just want to have their board operating, they want to have money churning out for people to use, and that would be it. Actually, the board did not require a lot of cost to maintain because the main cost items would be about printing that pieces of paper and handling more admin kind of operations. So after you deduct the expenses, typically there will be excess profits earned by the board. mentioned many times that trustworthiness was very important for the world currency, be it last time or today. You must really trust the currency for the currency to be used and to be sustainable. So in the case of Straits dollars, because people have more and more trust on Straits dollars, there would be more and more use of Straits dollars. When you have more and more use of Straits dollars, there will be more circulation of this currency, there will be more distribution of this currency everywhere. With more usage, you can generate even more trust due to the peer effect. If you see everyone using that currency, you see everyone using that something, you may think that that something should be quite good and quite safe to use. So it's like a compound contagion effect in your peers. And when you have more use of Straits dollars, there will be less withdrawal of sterling because there will be no need to withdraw sterling. You're happy to use that pieces of paper. You do not see a need to go to the void and then redeem the real heavy coins. And if you do not withdraw the heavy coins, the bot can use the money forever to make investment, to earn even more profit, and the bot will become even more and more healthy in financial terms. So it will become more sustainable, it will become more capable. And when the bot becomes more competent, more capable, more sustainable, the bot does not have any risk of dying, it will increase the trust of this currency and the bot furthermore. So it's like a cycle. Vicious cycle is a bad cycle, virtual cycle is a good cycle. So this is a virtual cycle. And at the same time, I think the more growth of trade also contributed to more use of Straits dollars naturally, because when you have more growth of trade, you will have more transactions, and because you have more transactions, you may have more use of Straits dollars. So there are some related effects here and there. Initially, the issuance and management of Straits dollar were under the Straits Settlements Currency Board. So it will be under the government, and therefore all the profit earned by the board would go to the government. I've said just now that the Straits dollars were not only used in the Straits Settlements. This currency was also used in places nearby. These places nearby, like the Malay states, are using this currency because they like it, because they trusted it. Why they like it, why they trusted it? Because of the confidence in Britain and the convenience of use. If everyone is using the same currency, it will be easier for us to do transactions by carrying just one currency. So if I'm from Perak, I'm from Selangor, I can just use the same Straits dollars at Penang and Malacca and Singapore, regardless whether this is my legal tender or not. Actually, the Malay states would be under their own kingdoms. The Malay states would have their own local tokens, but they preferred to use something else, the Straits dollars, due to whatever reasons, like those shown over here. As time went by, the Malay states and the Borneo territory joined the currency board. So every time there was new member joining the currency board may have a change in name for the currency. So you may have the Straits dollars renamed as Malayan dollars and then renamed as something else. For the purpose of this module, you need not care when all these name changes happen. You need not care about these name changes. When you are writing your assessments, I'm okay if you use Straits dollars, Malayan dollars, or Malayan and British Borneo dollars, whatever, in your answer. Because essentially, they refer to the same thing. They work in the same way. The main difference is the characteristics covered by the currency. So if you do not need to care whether should I use Straits dollars in this year or should I use Malayan dollar in that why the other places like Malay states and Borneo territories want to join the currency board? You need not join the currency board for your people to use the currency, right? Singapore need not join the US government in order to use US dollars. So why they want to use this participation into the currency board? Just now we said that if you have more use of Straits dollars, you will have more profit for the currency board. If the Malay states and the Borneo territories contributed a lot to the use of Straits dollars and the circulation of the Straits dollars, it means that they contributed to a lot of profit to the currency board. Why should they let the Straits settlements get all the profit and all the control of the money? So they would want to join the currency board to get a share of the profits produced by them. They will want to have a stake in the currency board, to have some say in the currency used by them. In case you are not that familiar with geography, when I talk about Malay states, I am referring to the Malay states here in the Malay Peninsula, before Malaysia is formed. So Malay states are here, then Borneo territories will be somewhere here. So because of you having different members inside the currency board, the profit will be distributed based on the estimated currency found or circulated in each territory. To highlight, the headquarters of this currency board was located in Singapore, but this currency board did not belong to Singapore. This currency board was not an organization under Singapore. It is an organization formed by several member territories. This is an example of how profit may be distributed for a particular year. So this is relevant to what was agreed in 1951. 1951 will be after World War II. So after World War II, there was no such thing as Straits settlements. If you know history, we will talk more about it later on. After World War II, there will be no more Straits settlements. Instead, you have Penang, Malacca, and the Malay states coming together to form the Federation of Malaya. So you can see that the Federation of Malaya took most of the profit, which is not surprising because they have a much bigger population. When you have more people, you have more transactions, obviously you have more circulation, and with more circulation, you will have a greater share of the profit. And Singapore being so small, still could obtain 29%, which is quite significant. Yeah. So it also reflects the amount of vibrancy in economic terms for Singapore.
Brunei and Sarawak, damn small.
The issuance of private banknotes was still allowed until about, I think, 1908. Then the use of private notes continued until about 1942, just before the World War II. Yeah. So basically, you have a transition period whereby Straits dollars and the banknotes coexisted. Certainly, you will allow some transition period for such coexistence. It will be unwise to say that from tomorrow onwards, everyone will use Straits dollars and you cannot use banknotes. This will be too drastic and not appropriate. For one, the banks will be very angry. You cut off a big source of revenue for them, and you do not give them time to adjust business operations. You need to give them a good transition. And if you suddenly have a hard deadline, say after today we will not allow use of banknotes, then you have all the people rushing to redeem their banknotes to get their real coins back. Then you are causing unnecessary deposit withdrawals and even bank runs. So it is better to have a phased implementation. Singapore and Malaysia was separated in 1965, and after the separation, there was actually negotiation to explore whether these two countries can still share a common currency, but this negotiation failed. So in the end, Malaysia would have Malaysian ringgit and Singapore would have a Singapore dollar. The currency continued to be in use after 1965 until 1967. So as you see again, we will have some transition period present to allow the design and implementation of the new currencies from the both countries. We cannot do a drastic change. So this would be the start of the Singapore dollar. This few lines at the top applies to Straits dollar. So it reiterated that the currency board office was located in Singapore, and with the use of this Straits dollar being pegged to sterling, global economic ties have been fostered for about 60 plus years. Then in 1967, new Singapore dollars started to be issued. This would be the picture of the Singapore dollar. If you look at this piece of note, you have a lot of photo pictures, words here and there. But you only have one short line here saying that the note is legal tender. You don't have that long sentence, that long paragraph saying that I promise this and promise that. Yeah, from then on, no more promises. The whatever note issuer will not promise anything from then onwards. Because from then onwards, the world, including Singapore, started to adopt the fiat system instead. We will talk a bit more about fiat system in lesson 8. But in short, at this point of time, a brief idea about fiat system would be that there will be no longer pegging to any object standard or physical commodity. So there's no such thing as gold standard, silver standard, sterling standard anymore. And you cannot redeem anything using the note. So you cannot take this piece of paper and go to a currency bar and say, I'll get real coins and real money or whatever. No such thing. There's nothing for you to redeem. Then if there's nothing to redeem and there's no pegging, how do you define the value of this piece of symbolic paper? It's really a piece of symbolic paper. And the coins are made by symbolic cheap metal. Yeah, no longer real gold, real silver. So the value of currencies under the fiat system would be purely 100% based on market sentiments. If you trust this currency, if you have confidence in this currency, the currency would have strong value. You feel, yeah, whatever you feel, that is what matters. If you feel that this currency is junk, then it will have zero or no value. Yeah. So it's really based on how you feel. Then what will affect your feelings, right? Then it will be very abstract, like what you feel from other people, what you see from charts, what you observe from your eyes, etc. The demand and supply of the currency will also play a part in shaping the market sentiments. So for example, if everyone likes this currency and everyone fights to get hold of this currency, the currency may be in limited stock, in limited supply. And because of this, prices or value of this currency may go up. It is like how the price of a product may go up if it is a limited edition and everyone wants to get a part of it. Yeah. Then if the government prints a lot of these pieces of paper, if you print too much of currency, you will have oversupply of the currency, the prices may go down. The value of the currency may go down. So if you have high demand for currency, value may go up. If you have low supply of currency, value may go up. The opposite also holds true. We'll talk more about this in lesson 8. For this, at this point of time, we just want to know that they are different from the old way. Yeah, so just by looking at the lines here, you can see the difference. So in summary, here are some key points to highlight the attributes, the merits, or the good points about the Straits dollars, which allow this Straits dollar to survive for a very long time in a happy mode. So the Straits dollars have public acceptance and confidence from the people due to people having trust in sterling, trust in Britain, trust in this currency model, trust in the currency board. The Straits dollars had wide and stable circulation, and I said before, when you have more and more circulation, it can further increase trust and confidence and convenience of the particular currency. Next, the currency board was doing well. The currency board was well managed. The currency board was sustainable. The currency board was profitable. So it managed to survive happily without much support from the government per se. It had not much means of collapsing and going bankrupt. This model of currency is quite low cost and quite simple in logic. So it suited a colony that lacked government funding. We said that EIC government and later on British government did not have much funding to finance Singapore. So if this currency board can be self-sustainable, that would be good. It suited a colony that had multinational trade and population. You have a lot of people all around the world doing business here, doing transactions here. So their trust in the currency can be further increased due to the link with sterling and the link with British Empire, etc. What's the influence of the legacy on the monetary system and banking scene today? I think I have a note over here at the bottom, which is quite related. So essentially, you can imagine that the Straits dollar has laid the foundation of monetary stability and structure found in Singapore today. So it is like a starting point for Singapore. It also helped to develop Singapore into a global financial center, global commercial center that has expertise in managing different kinds of currencies. Then you will see the link between Straits dollars and Singapore dollars in lesson 8. Basically, the experience and the lessons learned from Straits dollar would be important to the Singapore Pioneer Government. So the Singapore Pioneer Government had introduced certain features of the Straits dollar into the Sing dollar. The Singapore Pioneer Government had tried to prevent certain pitfalls of the Straits dollar in the Sing dollar. So in other words, the Pioneer Government of Singapore at that time in 1967 would learn good things from Straits dollars and use it in Sing dollar. Would learn bad things about Straits dollar and prevent the bad things from happening in Sing dollar. Okay, so now we have a small section on local banking because it's also highlighted in the textbook. Local banking means the banking sector, the banking scene in Singapore at the olden days during British rule. Due to the growth in trade and the influx of migrants, people in Singapore had more need or had increasing need in banking services. Last time, as said before, the banks present in Singapore were foreign banks, mainly Western ones. So these banks were not able to fully cater to the needs and interests of everyone. In particular, you have more and more Chinese migrating from China. So they also need banking facilities, they need banking services. But they were not able to get what they want from existing banks, mainly because they could not understand the language used by the existing banks, or they being lower income might not be the target customer pool of the existing banks. I've mentioned the point on trust again here. So a bank needs to trust and understand a person in order to lend money to that person. Conversely, a person needs to trust the bank and understand the bank in order to save money in the bank and borrow money from the bank. So you need to have trust from both sides. It is easier for the Chinese to get trust from the bank, and it is easier for the banks to get trust from the Chinese if they come from the same dialect group, if they use the same language, if you share the same cultures. Human beings always have this psychological impression that something more familiar is something more trustworthy. It is only an impression. It may not be true, but people always think about this way. That's how scams come about. Yeah. But whatever the case, if you want people to trust you more, you try to look more familiar to them. You try to have closer bonds with them. Yeah. So this marked the start of dialect-based banks. These banks, or these Chinese banks, are local, meaning they are homegrown in Singapore. They are dialect-based, meaning that you have Hokkien banks, Teochew banks, etc., separated or classified by the dialect groups of Chinese. These banks wrote on the British contract and banking law. Since Singapore was under British rule, the British contract and banking law helped to provide structure and robustness for the banking operations here. Although the banking sector in Singapore had a strong presence of Chinese at that time, we must not forget the prominence of Indians in the financial sector of Singapore. In fact, at that time, there were extensive setups of chattel money lenders who catered to the common folk and SMEs. For those who know, chattel would cover a group of people coming from certain areas in India, such as Tamil Nadu. So there were actually more setups from chattel money lenders than setups from the formal banks. So if you look at the offices, you look at the branches, chattel money lenders have far more setups than formal banks. They serve the common folk and SMEs that were not well catered by banks, that were not well understood by banks. However, they went on a decline when the government started to impose tighter control on private lending business in the 1970s. Nevertheless, I think we can see many money-changing businesses and many remittance businesses today in Singapore still being operated by Indians. Yeah, so I think this will be a reflection of some legacy from the past. It says here that Straits Dollars started local banks. You need to have local currency in order to start local banks decently. Because foreign currencies can be supported by foreign banks. If you want local banks, you should have certain decent local currency. And because of the start of issuance of Straits Dollars, you pave the way to start the creation of local banks. So I think this part is just repeating what I have said a lot of times. People would have to trust the Straits Dollars in order to use the Straits Dollars, in order to deposit in Straits Dollars, in order to borrow money in Straits Dollars, etc. As time goes by, there were many rounds of consolidations in the banking scene in Singapore. So with some banks opening, some banks closing, some banks merging, etc. Ultimately, in the end, Singapore is left with two banks with local Chinese banking roots. That would be your UOB and OCBC. If you know the Chinese names of these two banks, you can sense their local Chinese banking roots even more strongly. UOB and OCBC are among the three pillar local banks today. So they are important financial institutions that serve the monetary needs of Singapore today, and they perform extensive investments globally as well. The third local pillar bank would be DBS. But the origin of DBS would be very different from these two banks. So for these two banks, UOB and OCBC, they said that they have roots from local Chinese banking. These two banks were created bottoms up from the private sector with all these roots. DBS is very different. DBS started off as a government entity created top-down by the government. So their journey and their start point would be very different. Okay, with that, we shall end this part of lesson 3. I think the aircon is going down again. So this is my only thing that can hold you here. Okay, I will make some brief comments about assignment 1. Of course, I will not give you the answers, but perhaps I will highlight the key pointers you have to take note. And because I think from the past week or so, I have inquiries from students, so I will share some inquiries and my replies. You are supposed to do part A and part B, not either or. You have to do both. Okay? Then you have to answer the questions in part A, you have to answer the questions in part B. For part A, it says to examine one policy or initiative launched by the Singapore government in 2022 or 2023, which aligns with certain governance principles adopted in Singapore during the 19th century. Then the second question sounds similar. The main difference would be the word diverges from. So for this first part, you're supposed to discuss two policies. One policy that aligns, one policy that diverges. Okay? Then when you discuss this policy, make sure that it is launched by Singapore government in 2022 or 2023, not earlier. If it's earlier, then it's not that relevant. Some students ask, what if this thing is approved in 2022 or 2023, but will only take place in 2024, 2025? I am okay. as long as this thing is accepted, it's cast in stone, it is approved in 2022 or 2023, you can use it. The exact start date, I'll be more flexible. Policy, why I have this word policy slash initiative? Because sometimes it is a policy is maybe a strategy, but it can there's very specific program and very specific thing done by the government. It may be a very specific scheme, specific funding, or specific project, right? So anything that is related to policy, project, initiative, created by the government that can be used. Then when you discuss this policy or initiative, you should also highlight which governance principles are relevant. You must tell me that, okay, it aligns with that principle. What is that principle? You must tell. Then you must let me know what is the alignment so that people can understand. So try to make sure that you are discussing, explaining to the reader. So it must be clear what policy it is. It must be clear which governance principles those applicable. It should be clear how the alignment works. Similarly, for the second part, you must be clear which policy initiative you are trying to discuss, which governance principle occurs being diverged, and how the divergence look like, so that people can have some idea. Make sure that you follow a timeline, so the policy or initiative should be launched last year or this year, and the principles should be applicable in 19th century. Please go and revise what 19th century covers. Yeah, so you don't make sure you don't get the timeline wrong. Then for the second part, you're supposed to answer and discuss two events. So one event that reflects an economic challenge faced by Singapore today and the past. Then you discuss one event that may reflect an economic challenge that is faced by Singapore today, but not so obvious or not so applicable in the past. Similarly, make sure that you follow a timeline. Yeah. And you should highlight the economic challenge relevant. So when you, let's say for the first one, you discuss, okay, this event is the one that I want to discuss. Yeah. But what is the economic challenge being reflected? By telling me the story of this happening, it will not let me know what would be the challenge relevant. So I must be clear what the challenge is applicable to here. And then you say something about how it's applicable to both past and present. Then similarly, for the second one, you shouldn't just narrate an event, because if you narrate the event, people cannot see the application of economic challenge, it will be pointless. So the way you phrase your answer will be important. Then for the next part, you should answer the three questions over here. It says that you should go through the article appended. There is an article at the end of this document, so you should look through that article. The phrasing of this question, I think most of them are quite straightforward. So I will just highlight the things that you must remember and take note. It says here, show two effects that have actually been experienced by Singapore. So please do not tell me two effects that may happen, that may possibly happen, that you guess that can happen. No, it must have already happened. Okay? So please pay attention to this and try to give some evidence to prove that yes, this has happened. You want to use data, you want to use example, whatever you can, you tell me some evidence. Then the second question calls for one factor that may make banks in Singapore today to have less risk in bank runs than banks in Singapore under British rule. Then the same thing, the main difference will be more risk. So one factor that may cause banks today to have less risk on bank runs than banks in the past, and one factor that may cause banks in Singapore today to have more risk of bank runs than banks in the past. There is some comparison involved in this question. So make sure that the comparison between banks in Singapore today and banks in Singapore under British rule can be visible. I can imagine that many of you would not talk about the British rule at all. You will just say a factor that can increase risk, a factor that will decrease risk. No, beyond that, please say something that shows comparison. Yeah, it's a way of expression. Your main idea may be correct, but the way you say is the one that matters. Then, when you discuss each factor, try to make use of the collapse of any US bank this year in your illustration. Meaning that when you want to support your argument for the factor, or you want to prove the argument of your factor, you try to incorporate this collapse of US banks this year. You can incorporate the collapse of one bank or two banks or all banks in general up to you. Okay? How you want to use them up to your creativity. So perhaps, let's say, you are discussing a factor that may cause more risk, then you can say that this factor actually cause more risk in these US banks. See, you say that this will cause more risk and then it really happens in US banks, it is applicable, something like that. The last question would be about opinion. So I have mentioned before, when you opinion questions, the first thing you must do is to state your stand clearly. You don't start talking about stories, people do not know what is your stand. You must state, is better, is not better, is what or what. Whatever stand you make is fine as long as you can justify properly. So you should give two reasons to explain why your stand is like that. If your stand is it is better, give two reasons why it is better. If your stand is it is not better, give two reasons why it is not better. Or if your stand is something else, then you give two reasons based on whatever stand you say. Please make sure that your reasons must be supported by real life data or example from Singapore in 2023. So you must use the most current, the latest information to prove. It is quite doable. I dare to ask because I know there are data and examples present. Most importantly, whatever reasons you give should not be related to bank runs and collapses. If it is related to bank runs and collapses, welcome, 0 marks definitely. Yeah, because it doesn't fit. So there are many reasons why you choose a bank, or you use one or more banks, or you use only one bank. So the reason of bank runs and collapses should not be used. You must find other reasons to justify. The article provided some related points, but not all the points. It is not necessary to use the article. It is not necessary to rely totally on the article. Anyway, you're supposed to do research or elsewhere. So you can get some clues from the article, but you should find information outside the article. You should use your own analysis outside the article to provide further argument and content. So this would be the deadline. It's a hard deadline. Then you should use essay writing. So do not write point forms like my slides. Yeah, so try to make it in proper sentences, proper prose. You must use Word document, Word format, because this is the requirement of the Canvas system. You have word limit. So the word limit stated here is 400 to 650 for part A, 600 to 850 for part B. This 600 and 850 refers to the whole of the 3 questions. So it does not matter how you distribute the 850 among the three. You can have more for this, less for that, whatever you want. But the collective amount should be kept within 850. But I must remind you that all three questions are equally weighted. So you should give comparable amount of content for three. If you have 1 or 2 lines for one part, and then you have one whole page for the other part, I can assure you that the 1 or 2 lines will be too insufficient. If you exceed the word count, I will not mark, to be fair, because we need to train you to be more concise. And definitely, the more you write, the more content you will have, and the more answer you can provide. So to put everyone on an equal playing field, you are all put under the same limitation. You will be penalized by not being graded if you exceed the word count. I will not penalize or deduct marks if you go below, because if you go below, you are already penalizing yourself. This is really to tell you that this is really the barest minimum that you should provide to give decent content. If you write less than this, right, your answer will be too flimsy and empty. And really, if you just hit a bit more, it is also not sufficient to have a good answer. So there's a reason, this is more for a reference to let you know that going too low, you will not be giving out good answer. If you are not familiar on how to use the new Canvas system to submit assignment, this will be the guide to refer to. This assignment carries 25% of your grade, so 50% for part A, 20% of part B. I've said just now, all 3 questions in part B are equally weighted. Then you may ask whether, how should I answer part B? Should I be writing a continuous essay, or should I have question 1, question 2, question 3, up to you, as long as the answers are there. You are supposed to do this work individually. You should do research because, as you can see, assignments tend to be research-based, and you try to offer your own views and insights to show the arguments from your point of view. Make sure that the answers will be fully or primarily based on your own inputs, and not just copy and paste from AI tools. If you want to use AI tools, at most it can provide you some rough ideas, but how you expand on it, how you argue on it, how you prove it, you really have to use your own ways. And unlikely this assignment can be written properly using AI tools. Then if you use any reference, be it publication, be it website, or even AI tools, you should cite. I have used this, I have used that. This is to prevent the risk of plagiarism. If you are not so sure how to cite references, I think I made some comments in this handout file under modules assessments. You can go through it. I'm okay for you to use any citation styles as long as you cite. The bare minimum requirement for me is please cite your references. The way you cite, I can be more flexible. But as I have mentioned to some of your classmates, I am okay for this assignment. But if you want to practice for your future life, you want to cite it professionally because you want to do proper reports in your workplace future, you can choose one of the citation styles highlighted in the handout. There's a website link from NUS given. You can look at which one to use. I will suggest APA if you have no idea which one to choose. But if you just take something, I am also okay, as I prefer you to cite than no citations. Okay? Then I think plagiarism warning, this part is always shown in all my assessments. We have said enough that it will be penalized. You cannot copy content wholesale from any references. When you submit the assignment via Canvas, very quickly, Canvas will give you a percentage. That shows the amount of potential similarity with online text, online materials, including your friend's submissions. So you should try to keep this as low as possible. It is very should be low because the value is not straightforward. A ballpark figure, I would say you try to keep below 20. It does not mean that below 20 you are definitely safe, but above 20 you are definitely not safe. Okay. If you are scared that you may get caught for plagiarism, my suggestion is that you may want to submit it slightly earlier, like 1 or 2 days earlier. Then you see the percentage coming out from this screen. And then, because the turn-in function will highlight certain text which they feel that you have missed in plagiarism, then you can do some editing to make sure that you have some rephrasing or whatsoever. Then, if you know the new developments, Turnitin also have another index value to catch AI plagiarism. But unfortunately, the system is designed in a way that you cannot see the percentage. I can see the percentage. Yeah. So do not try to take the gamble. If the percentage is not nice, then that's it. Yeah. This I would say that this index value is better than this one. So don't try. I have further comments about AI tools. If you can use AI to create answer, I also can see the answer. So I will know whether, without using the detector, I also roughly know whether you have plagiarized or not. And for the detector in Turnitin, it's not just ChatGPT. If you are here for the previous lessons, I've highlighted that they can figure out anything that is related to AI algorithm. So even your rewriting kind of programs like Grammarly, like Qbot, even Google Translate, or even Bing, sometimes you can detect because it's written not by human. So they may even group everything under this value, so I would suggest that you be more prudent. And ChatGPT only has content on text on data up till 2021. And typically my assignments will be current based on current time, so it will be quite difficult for you to find a complete relevant answer to address it. Okay. And yeah, this would be the article I mentioned just now. So if that, I shall end the session. Thank you.